You may have noticed I haven't been uploading that much recently, and honestly, there's a really clear reason for that. I started this snowball of a script 3 months ago, and every time that I had it completed, something about the scope of this project changed. I'm not kidding. I had a video scripted, recorded, and in early editing on October 11th, and that project would ultimately turn into this one. I hope you enjoy. Brief update from editing, it literally happened again, and I had to rewrite some of this video. Anyway, if you know anything about Cedar Point, you know that they love to tease their fans by dropping little breadcrumbs here and there, sometimes building up a reveal for a year or more before finally making their big announcements. 2 recent examples of this would be teasing RMC Mean Streak for essentially a year before their press conference the following August, at which they finally showed off Steel Vengeance, and the gentle lead up to the announcement of the boardwalk throughout 2022, ranging from art on the fence to little comments from park staff, to Tony mentioning at Coastermania that the park is going to be upholding its coaster legacy, which in hindsight was probably a strong hint at Wild Mouse being an homage to the former Wild Mouse at Cedar Point. Due to this teasing relationship that the park has with the community, a lot of enthusiasts were highly anticipating Cedar Point's yearly holiday video. They've been known to put hints and Easter eggs in these videos, and with the future of Top Thrill Dragster officially unknown as of that point, we waited with high hopes for even a glimpse of what may be coming. I don't think any of us quite expected what we got, that being this folder marked confidential, CP2024PMPNR. Immediately, the enthusiast community erupted with chaos, screenshots, tweets, YouTube comments, Discord messages, Instagram posts. Well, you get the idea. It's safe to say that for at least one day, Cedar Point had our attention with their cryptic teases. But what could it mean? Admittedly, I originally thought this was a meme. Right after the tease, Tony pulled a picture of Cedar Point's executive chef out of the folder. This led me to believe that NR stood for New Restaurant, and the whole thing was a bit to tease enthusiasts who say that Cedar Point is making too many restaurants and not enough new rides. But the more I sat on this idea, the less I liked it. This is where all of my video topics have gone for the last 3 months and gotten jumbled up and blended in and all that into this video. I have to backtrack a bit to explain, so let's briefly look at some Cedar Point history. Let's look at some major removals, additions, and changes that Cedar Point has made in the last decade to predict the path that they're probably going down. 2012 saw 2 major changes at Cedar Point that I personally still see ripples from to this day, those being the closure of Disaster Transport and the removal of Wildcat. These coasters going defunct was sadly necessary, as Cedar Point is effectively landlocked by Lake Erie. With water surrounding 3 sides of the park and the parking lot blocking off the other side, Cedar Point essentially has to make do with what land they have. After rapid expansion in the 90s and 2000s, the park's land is largely covered with attractions, paths, and restaurants, so in order to build new things, some things have to be torn down. 2012 was definitely a year of tearing down, but 2013 saw 2 new additions, one being an expansion of the area of the park called Celebration Plaza with the addition of a large stage for live production shows, and a plaza for things such as food trucks, Halloween events, and basically anything the park needs. Across the park on Disaster Transport's old plot, we saw the addition of a shiny new wing coaster by Bolliger and Mabillard, or B&M for short. Reception was mixed about this coaster, but one thing is for sure. That redesigned front entrance that came along with it made the front of the park significantly more aesthetically pleasing and inviting in general. 2014 saw yet another closure, that being Mantis, the B&M stand-up coaster. However, 2015 saw a new paint job, name, and set of floorless trains debut on the same track with a new cone of paint. This was called Rougarou. This was essentially just a quality of life improvement for the park and that general area after the addition of the Celebration Plaza stage just a couple years prior. Valraven opened in 2016 to really round out that entire area of the park, as well as serving as a great excuse to redo the Marina Gate, which is located right here, into the now beautiful Valraven Gate. 2016 also saw the closure of Mean Streak in the back of the park. This old wooden coaster was once the king, but had sadly fallen from grace and suffered from terribly low ridership. This ride was in a themed land with Maverick, often considered to be the best coaster in the park. Anything that was going to replace Mean Streak had to be bigger, badder, and even better. And boy did Cedar Point and Rocky Mountain Construction deliver. Donning the name Steel Vengeance, not only was this new coaster an amazing ride, but upon opening in 2018, it did what Valraven did just 2 years earlier and tied the entire area together. Not only did Steel Vengeance bring traffic to Frontier Town in a way Mean Streak had not done in decades, but the lore of this ride literally tied together the 3 coasters in that area into one large story. 2019 and 2022 specifically need to be mentioned for one reason, that being restaurants. Throughout the entire decade that I've been discussing, Cedar Point had been building restaurants, but I really want to focus on a few particular additions. Backbeat Q is a barbecue restaurant on the Dragster and Magnum Midway that opened in 2019. The big focus of this restaurant was music, being totally themed to that. There's even an outdoor stage with live music throughout the day for diners to enjoy while they eat their food. 2022, however, added 2 new restaurants that are fundamental to where I think Cedar Point is headed in the next 3 to 10 years. I was at Cedar Point opening day this past season, and it was a mess, let me tell you. Totally not the fault of the park at all. Winds were around 30 miles an hour to start the day, so many people headed towards food as an option to pass the time. While I did not personally head over there, I noticed a lot of people heading back to the new Firehouse Grill in Frontierland. I finally made it back there a month or so later, and what I saw impressed me. Cedar Point had begun making themed dining experiences. The restaurant fit in perfectly as the center point for Frontierland, both with its campfire-style cooking and decor. I was very pleased with this, and Frontier Town quickly became my favorite place in the park. Another restaurant would open just a month or so later in the same general area, that being the Wild Turnip. This restaurant is highly specialized and focuses on gluten-free and vegetarian or vegan options. This was added to make sure the whole family can eat at the park and to accommodate as many dining restrictions as possible. If we look at the trend line running through the last decade in the park, it's abundantly clear that Cedar Point picks a section of the park to focus on for improvement and tries to tie it together as best as they can. A lot of people have made the observation that the park is trying to become a destination park in the same way as Disney or Universal, and I honestly didn't really see this until I laid the entire picture of the last decade out on paper. Cedar Point built a loosely themed land in the early 2010s around the Celebration Plaza with the addition of a stage and Valraven, as well as the reworking of Mantis and the addition of the VIP Millennium Lounge in 2020. And they also built on the theming they had in Frontier Town in the last 5 years to make a solid themed area with elite rides, amazing dining, and beautiful scenery. Where does that leave Cedar Point for the future though? What is the end game? I believe they are truly trying to become a theme park as opposed to an amusement park, and the next 2 years will lay down the path perfectly for that goal. We know exactly what will be added to Cedar Point in 2023, and while a lot of fans of the park are down in the dumps about it, the new area of the park is without debate a huge move for Cedar Point. Stretching from Gatekeeper all the way back to the Windseeker Gate, which gives the park an amazing opportunity to redo that gate if they want to, just like they did in 2013 and 16 for the main gate in Valraven. This expansion bypasses the trend of piecemeal adding things to make a themed area, and will be an entire themed area opening at once, including a new family coaster, renovation of some older rides, and a new Grand Pavilion featuring, as far as we know, at least 2 new dining options as well as patio seating above the beach to have views of Lake Erie. Basically, it appears the park seems to be going full speed towards themed areas, and that leads me to 2024. As of the writing of this part of the script onwards, it has been announced today that the new roller coaster will be opening in 2024, and that's, well, it's Dragster. There's been a lot of rumors about what will actually be happening to this iconic coaster, so let's take a quick look at them and how they tie into what Cedar Point could be doing next. As of now, the general accepted idea is that Zamperla will be doing work to get the next iteration of Dragster off the ground and launching again using LSMs. This is based on a lot of rumors as well as a few key things that Zamperla has said. In a marketing video for their new lightning trains, they have gone on record to say this.
Think of them as magnets rolled out. They go positive, negative, to accelerate the train in a matter of seconds. We can go from 0 to 45 kilometers per hour or 0 to 200. It's all up to our clients. In addition, the Lightning vehicle has different road wheels than we've ever used before. They're made to be low maintenance, withstand high accelerations, and will soon be seen on some of the world's fastest attractions.
Clearly, they're planning on taking their trains up to immense speeds. And I have 2 more tidbits of information that I haven't seen anybody talk about. I was lucky enough to be at the reveal for the Lightning train this year at IAAPA and noticed one particular thing. Zamperla was addressing the press about their reputation in the coaster industry and said they have huge projects coming that will prove their worth within the next 2 years. Assuming that this 2 years was from November 2022 through 2024, the only Lightning train project we're aware of at this time is the old Intamin hydraulic that they bought and are retrofitting with an LSM launch for PNE Playland at Vancouver, Canada. Though this will be Canada's fastest launch coaster, I don't think anybody could call this a big project. The top speed is a mere 45 miles an hour, and it is by most people's definitions a family coaster, perhaps a mild thrill coaster at best. Zamperla clearly has a big project that they have coming up in 2024 that they have not told us about themselves. Combine that with the fact that the man who designed the Lightning trains himself told me they literally have no design top speed and can go on any attraction necessary, I think it's pretty safe to say that Dragster's removed track being shipped to Italy definitely ended up at Zamperla's workshop, not Intamin's like I originally predicted. Another rumor I've heard of is, well, it's kind of backwards. I've heard that there's a possibility that Dragster as we know it will be getting quite the turnaround, that being the launch track and brake runs swapping places. I originally wrote this off as nonsense, but if we overanalyze the tease video put out confirming the 2024 opening of the quote-unquote new coaster, it almost seems to paint a picture of launching up the Heartline roll, cresting the top hat, and falling back down the straight track. Take this with a huge grain of salt, as it's merely rumors and speculation, but hey, it's something to think about. At the very least, it helps explain why the station is being torn up as we speak, due to the fact that it may be totally need to rework for this idea to happen. The last thing to note about Dragster before I finally begin talking about the cryptic CP2024PMPNR is that the park is now calling it a new coaster and new attraction. This is strongly fanning the flames of the extended layout believers, as they point out that the wording confirms something additional will be added to this ride. I'm personally up in the air about an extended layout, but if I'm right about what else is to come in 2024, I could without doubt see it potentially happening, I guess. So what does CP2024PMPNR mean? I personally believe this is the internal code name for the entire project circulating around that midway that has been right in front of us the whole time. But even more than that, I might know what it is themed to and exactly what the code stands for. Earlier this season, the entire midway from the Coasters restaurant all the way up through Gemini has been covered in spray paint. As many enthusiasts figured out early on, the red marks denote electrical lines, but I dove even further into this because I'm an obsessed YouTuber. The blue marks denote water lines and the green marks denote sewage lines, all of which need to be marked for a survey prior to construction planning. Back in August of 2022, when it was announced that 2 flat rides near Corkscrew's turnaround were being moved to the aforementioned boardwalk area, rumors began to fly that Corkscrew would be seeing its final operation in 2023. The removal of this iconic coaster would open a fairly large plot of land in the middle of a high-traffic part of the park, especially when combined with the area that was formerly taken up by the now-moved flat rides. It has long since been rumored and speculated that Dragster will take on a space theme when it reopens, and I think that the park is going to go full send and capitalize on the opportunity to give that entire area of the park a much-needed facelift, as well as further their endgame of becoming a true theme park. No matter how you feel about it, the name Top Thrill Dragster essentially has to go away for PR reasons. The association with the unfortunate accident that caused the initial closure of this ride and the iconic name, and even the theming of the original ride, would forever live on in infamy. But the park can shed that bad branding with a simple rename and theme change, especially if they switch manufacturer away from Intamin, who has a less than outstanding safety record. Check out my video about that in the description if you want to know more. Basically, it seems as if Cedar Point has all the ingredients for a brand new area to drum up excitement and bring visitors into the park, and CP2024PMPNR explains that perfectly. It's obvious to everyone that CP2024 means Cedar Point 2024. No one's arguing that, right? Good. Figuring out the next sequence of letters was the hard part. Early on, the consensus was that NR stood for new record, implying that Dragster would take back either the height or speed record. I personally never really believed this, so I began thinking about PMP to hopefully shed some more light on what the NR means. After thinking for a while, I remembered the spray paint marks that implied construction was coming on the Dragster midway. It was at this moment that the pieces started clicking into place, but I did not have the whole picture yet. In fact, it wasn't until today when Cedar Point revealed their 2024 teaser and I connected almost all of the dots. Cedar Point is considering Dragster a new ride entirely, a concept that shattered my thoughts about what this coded tease could mean wide open. While the thought of NR meaning new rides had crossed my mind many times, the possibility of it being new ride, singular, had not. Suddenly, I felt like that scene in The Hangover with the floating numbers as my brain rushed to connect MP with Midway Project, leaving only the first P. I then remembered back in 2019, when Cedar Fair applied for a trademark for the word Polaris. This was believed to be a working name for Orion at Kings Island, and the trademark has since lapsed, but it reminded me of the space rumors and connected the last link of the chain. The first P could internally stand for Polaris. I could also see Planetary as an internal working name, but either way. I wholeheartedly think that CP2024PMPNR was a tease at Dragster and the accompanying Midway project that none of us could really connect the dots to before the January 9th teaser. I personally believe that Cedar Point will have a major Midway project that is space themed to launch with the new Dragster attraction. I believe that corkscrew may or may not be removed, and that the area near its turnaround will be the new entrance to the new space-themed area that Cedar Point is primed to build and has already begun taking steps towards, and are now seemingly teasing with the CP2024PMPNR, as well as their early marketing for 2024. Take this with a huge grain of salt, obviously, as it is me piecing things together and speculating, but if this theory is true, I'm super hyped about space theming. That area has needed help for a long time, and I really hope it gets it next year. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you made it this far, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps out the channel so much, and I'm going to be ramping up video output as the year goes on, so stay tuned for that. I'm Josh from Station Wait. Have a great day.